On this week's video, we are checking out the butterfly effect, which is one that I actually had a hard time deciding between putting into sci-fi timelines or horror timelines. Who are you? I'm the Josh from the ending of this video. I've traveled back in time to tell you that you should put this as a horror timeline. But I've already done the intro card. It's a sci-fi timeline. Well, great. Now you've done it. You've set Jerry free. You know that this isn't even how time travel works in these movies, right?
Okay. Chaos begins back in 2004 with the butterfly effect, which kicks off with Kelso on the run. And then it goes on to what it says is 13 years earlier, and little Evan is a troubled kid. And Rocky Dennis is here too, and oh no! He's a creepster pedo. Evan's x-rays show his date of birth being February of '82, and his mom says that he's 7 years old, which places this portion of things in 1989.
April 15th.
Hey, it's our birthday. I mean, if this is 1989, I guess I'd be turning 33.
His dad dies, and we jump to 6 years later, so that'd be 1995, and Evan is now 13 years old and still having blackouts. He finds a death certificate marked 1972 for his grandfather, so he died 10 years before Evan was born, and they go to a theater showing Seven and Dumb and Dumber, which came out in 95 and 94. His friend Tommy turns out to be a psychopath, and not only did they accidentally kill a woman and her baby in an explosion, but Tommy burns Evan's dog alive. And Jesus Christ, is this movie bleak.
I mean, I was in a good mood before I started watching these.
We now jump 7 more years, and it's now 2002, and Evan is Ashton Kutcher, and his roommate is Randy at his most absolute unit. And can you believe that this guy is now this guy? He's lost like 200 pounds.
He just lost like an entire me.
There's some stuff here where Evan doesn't have a soul, and his mother had a couple of stillborn babies before him, and he goes to find Kaylee, who's grown into Amy Smart. And she gets so upset by their reunion that she kills herself because the cavalcade of fun just never ends here. Evan figures out that he can go back in time to his blackouts, and in doing so, can change the past. Which he does by confronting Kaylee's dad, and she has a normal life and ends up with Evan. So, yeah, let's discuss time travel.
So there's basically 3 types of time travel in movies. We covered these in our Terminator timeline, but that was a few years ago. So here's a refresher.
There's a fixed timeline in which there's only one set timeline. You can't change the past, and going back in time to do so would only result in those being the way the events occurred in the first place anyway. Best example of this is 12 Monkeys, but the first Terminator movie, the first one, is also this. The second kind is a dynamic timeline in which you can go back and change the past, and in doing so, change history. The timeline will then change and alter so that the way that the new timeline occurs is the way that it has always been. Back to the Future works this way, at least in the first movie. Finally, there's the multiverse timeline, or timelines, in which you can go back and change the past, but in doing so, you create a new timeline, branching off from the original. The original timeline is still there, the way that you had always experienced things, but the change creates a second timeline in which the events that your alterations cause occur. Back to the Future 2 works this way, sorta, and so does Primer. I guess.
Does anyone really understand Primer? I don't.
Anyway, this movie is the second option, a dynamic timeline. When Evan changes the past, his timeline ceases to exist, rewritten by the new one. Oh, and in the new timeline, Evan and Kaylee have sex while she has a sheet over her. How? how does this work? Everything seems pretty cool and all, but Tommy's still crazy and Evan kills him and goes to jail, where he's raped, and it's the feel-good movie of the year. He goes back again, but this time ends up with Tommy dead and Kaylee scarred, and Tommy's tombstone says 95, which confirms that, and then this x-ray extra confirms the 2002 date. This branch makes Kay a prostitute, so he changes stuff again, which costs him his arms, but everyone else is happy. But then his mom has cancer, of course. So he goes back again, kills Kaylee accidentally, and gets institutionalized when all he wanted was a Pepsi. So Evan figures out that he's the common thread in everyone's misery. So he goes back to his own birth and strangles himself with his own damn umbilical cord. And he kills himself, and then everyone else gets a happy ending. I should point out, by the way, that the mom had 2 stillborn babies before this, which would insinuate that this same thing happened to 2 other people before this, that everyone has made the choice to go back to being a baby and killing themselves, is what that is kind of insinuated. Oh my god, this is the most depressing thing that I have ever freaking seen. Really?
You know that's the director's cut, right? Where did you hear that? My future self actually told me. Well, that's not the actual ending, so what was that one?
Okay, in this version, he goes back to the day that he met Kaylee and yells at her and freaks her out so that they never become friends. And everyone gets that happy ending again. And Evan burns his journals and all of his memories, and then it jumps 8 years ahead to 2010 then, and he passes her on the street, and there.
Well, I guess that's happier. I could put this down now.
2 years later, the film got the sequel treatment with 2006, The Butterfly Effect 2, but skipped the theaters and went straight to video. It's directed by the guy who gave us Mortal Kombat Annihilation and the first Annabelle movie, so we got a 50-50 chance between ridiculous cheese and total boredom. It's Lois Lane here's 24th birthday, and her boyfriend Nick gets them into a car crash that kills her and her friends. We bounce to 1 year later, and Nick is developing the same abilities that Evan had and travels back to the wreck and manages to avoid it. This brings Julie back 1 year later, and while trying to figure out what happened, Nick finds the case study on Evan's dad, which was done in 2004, so we're at least past that, and in the same continuity then. Nick gets fired, so he uses his ability to go back to a Christmas party and sabotages his future boss. So when he returns, he's the boss, and his calendar gives us the year, and the present day Nick is in October of 2007, with the wreck occurring in 2006 then. This Nick is banging the boss's daughter, and he's split with Julie. And then there's some investor problems that lead to Julie getting shot and killed, and Nick, also gets raped, because I guess that's a theme here. So he goes back again, and I just realized that the whole blackout portion of the first film has been totally dropped here. And that one, it was hinted that these blackouts were instances of him going back and forth in time, but they're just non-existent here. Julie reveals that she was pregnant, and then he ends up driving off of a cliff in order to save her. Back in 2007, Julie's baby also has the ability, so I guess the story continues. The trilogy ended 3 years later with 2009's The Butterfly Effect 3, Revelations, which starts off with a woman being murdered in front of a kid and a man waking up in a tub of ice. Sam here jumps through time, but unlike the first two, he can't just focus and do it, I guess, and uses his ability to solve crimes, which is a big switch up from the other films. He and his sister had a traumatic experience when Sam was 15, and Sam's girlfriend was killed in 1998. He has a mentor who gives him 2 rules: never change your own past and never jump unsupervised. And we learned that his sister died in that fire, and he actually jumped back to save her, but their parents died instead. So the guy who was accused of killing Sam's girl, Rebecca, didn't do it, so Sam decides to clear his name, and he says that he's been locked up for 10 years. So we're seemingly in 2008 now, and this case file tells us that her death date was 6/6/98. And he goes back, but it ends up with her sister being killed as well, and goes back to a changed present. When he goes back in time again, he keeps on making things worse, and the killer seems to be stalking him specifically. And this receipt confirms for sure that we're in '08, and it's September 29th. Finally, after some cat and mouse escapades, the killer is revealed to be Jenna, and she also time jumps. She's in love with Sam and jumps when he does, which is why the killer is always one step ahead. So he jumps back to 15 years old, and kills his sister.
Come on, is anything happy here?
So back in '08, he's married to Rebecca and has a kid. His parents are alive, and everyone's all good. And all Sam had to do was kill his sister. Oh, and his daughter's crazy, so there's that, I guess.
So there you have it. It's 3 movies that are largely unrelated, and for the most part, for films about time travel, mostly make sense in terms of a timeline. You could pretty much watch them in any order, and I wouldn't be surprised to find out that the 3rd one was actually an unrelated script that they changed to make a part of the franchise. A horror franchise, by the way. Well, it's Sci-Fi now, but and I like the first one, and the 3rd one isn't too bad. I don't think I'd put any of these into the great category, but I'll definitely give them pretty good. The 2nd one is the only one that I would just straight up skip. Told you. What the hell was that, Jerry? There is no Jerry. He's just a fake character that I refer to sometimes as a joke. Well, he's real now. He's crossing over. Oh no. Is it too late to stop him? Yes, but actually you can go back in time to the beginning of this video to see if you can get yourself to change it. All right, then here we go. Well, we'll see how that works out. But in the meantime, like this video, please subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell button so you get the notifications. Leave me a comment down below to let me know what you thought about these movies and such and this time travel stuff. And of course, check out my patrons on my Patreon page, which is patreon.com/movietimelines, where these people help support the channel. You can do that as well too by going there. I'd appreciate that. And I also appreciate you just watching the video. I mean, we both do. Hopefully oh, wait a minute. It's just me. That was just me. Well, whatever. We'll see you very shortly for another great video. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.